The role of the leader in any organization is to lead the team, the organization to a brighter future.
Brad, I appreciate you jumping on today. A little bit of your background would be great for people who are viewing that may not know you.
I'm the lead pastor of Anthem Church in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, right on the edge of Tulsa. Church planted in fall of 2006, so we'll be 20 years old this fall, which is amazing. And I church planted with 23 people. So from scratch, my wife and I were two of the 23. So really 21. And man, God's just blessed us. It's been a long journey. Pretty wild to tell people I've been senior pastoring for 20 years, but God's been with us. Love Tulsa, love Oklahoma. I'm originally from California, from Los Angeles, and before that, San Francisco. But I've been out in Oklahoma for a lot of years now and married to my wife. We've been married 24 years. We have four kids, 16, 13, 11, and 6. So be busy and grateful for all of that as well. So yeah, that's our story, and the story of our church. Maybe another detail to that is we were almost 10 years old as a church plant, and then we merged with another church here in Oklahoma. We were looking for land, looking to build, trying to figure out where our permanent location was going to be here in our city because we've been in two different locations, setting up and tearing down for over 9 years. And I met this pastor that was 70 years old who was getting ready to retire. And we just made a deep connection, and so we brought our churches together and we created Anthem Church out of that merger. So I like to tell people in some ways, our church was, or my role was a succession. I was succeeding a pastor who had been at his church for 30 years and was 70 years old. So I'm part succession, part part church merger where we were bringing two churches together to create another one. And I'd say the last third was really church planting. Really, in my mind, it was like we were planting a church for the second time. I had planted it in 2006. Then we were sort of church planting again in 2016. Succession, merger, church planting, and all that mashed together created Anthem Church. So
Yeah,
very cool.
And that's so crazy. And you learn that story, I think, when you go through your new member classes with Anthem, if I remember correctly. And then because y'all kind of had to work out staff arrangements as well during the
Yes.
merger. So how did that all kind of play out for you guys?
Well, God had really blessed us financially before the merger. We had another church give us up their property, which was totally out of the blue, unexpected. And so we owned that. We had that property temporarily. We never met there. And we sold that property right around the merger. So we had enough, God bless us with enough cash reserves so that I just told the entire staff at both churches that were merging not to worry about their jobs, just worry about doing a great job and finding their fit. And some people might have to job descriptions might change, but their pay and their role wasn't threatened by the merger. And maybe not every merger can say that, but we were enabled to do that. We just said, hey, let's just focus on the kingdom, focus on what God's doing here. And so we brought the staffs together. We had some duplicated roles, as you might expect. So we had to figure out what was going to change about some people's roles, what was going to stay the same. And so we did that with all of our two staffs, brought them together. Same thing happened with our boards. We brought our two church boards together. And so in that way, we truly did merge all of our staff, all of our board. And a lot of the staff that I inherited from the other church are still with us today. Grateful for that. Grateful for them.
Awesome.
Make a huge contribution. So that really made us better, and grateful that they stayed for the adventure.
No, that's huge. I mean, it's really crazy to see any sort of thing happen like that under those circumstances and see such unity coming out of the side of it. Because the church you planted was non-denominational, and then the church you merged with was Baptist. Is that correct?
Well, technically, both churches were Baptist
Okay.
from their founding. We were a church plant from a large Baptist church here in town, with a strong history. I'd been on staff there for a number of years. So they sent us out to church plant. The church we were merging with was Baptist. So that kind of paved the road.
Mhm.
Neither one of us really led with the fact that we are denominationally Baptist.
Mhm.
So we had kind of a similar Proud of our heritage, but not really leading with that, not highly denominational churches, if that makes sense. We merged Baptist. We are actually now non-denominational, so we're not technically Southern Baptist at this point, but we were at our founding, and so it was an easy bridge. We knew a lot of the same people, so we didn't know each other at all. Really, leadership, me and the other pastor didn't know each other. None of our teams knew each other, but we knew a lot of the same people, and so you know how trust often comes from knowing the same people. It helps. It allowed us to fast forward everything, speed it up, which we needed to. And we really needed to be able to jump into the deep end together quickly to do it, which meant we didn't have time to microwave trust on our own. We had to really rely on the trust of knowing the same people, and so God did that. And it was very easy for them to call people and say, "What do you know about Brad?" For me to call people that I trusted and ask about the church. It's a big deal to merge. Most churches that merge, as we did, are actually a year later the size of whatever the larger of the two churches was. Meaning it's not addition, it's usually subtraction. If you take, you take A plus B, if you take for just rudimentary, if you take 100 people in one church, 100 people in another church, you merge them, you think to yourself it's going to be 200. Typically within very short order, it's 100 because
Right.
the systems, the way of thinking about things are all perfected for 100. They're not perfected for 200. And in our case, we were much more than that merging together. So all the more the case. So anyway, we had to make a lot of decisions and reformulate how we did things quickly in order for us to go to the next level. And for us, the reason we merged is we believe we'd be better together, not just be together. You can just be together and not be better. You can be worse and together.
Right.
Bigger alone isn't necessarily better, but we believed we could make more of a city impact together. And so that meant we had to really go for it and trust each other.
So that's awesome. One. And two, my wife and I got to attend your church for quite a while and we got really involved. And we went there right after I had stepped out of full-time ministry and had kind of a little bit more insight than your usual first-time church visitor as to what the church might look like behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And as we got to know everybody and speak with everybody, I was, telling my wife, it's crazy what they're doing here. Like the staff health it's like, I haven't seen anything like this, and the unity of the team and the unity of purpose and vision. And I've gotten to talk to a lot of churches, a lot of pastors in different capacities and, roles, worship pastor, youth pastor, lead pastor, children's media, whatever. And it always seems like most of the time there's not 100% clarity on what the overall drive and purpose of the church is. And it seems like, that's something that you've really prioritized, at least from what I can see. And so walk us through what that looks like to create that staff culture of, okay, we've got two teams. We've got to kind of get everybody on board fairly quickly or else the ship's going to sink. How do you, one, get everybody on the same page, and two, really create this sense, like, what are your priorities? What are the systems you're thinking through? Like, hit me with it. I know that's a big question.
Great question. Well, let me tell a story that might help it. So one of the first staff meetings, if we're going back in time, I think I could get to present as well, but going back in time, one of the first staff meetings we had as one shared staff, everybody around the table, team, people that didn't know each other, had maybe met in passing at this point, but really had not been in the same room. I decided to start creating I didn't know what other ones I would create yet, but I started with one staff value. I said, there'll be more, but we're going to start with one. And it's the one we need the most. And that is choose to trust. We are going to choose to trust. And trust, if you don't have enough time in history, is just a it's just a choice. You just got to choose to trust. We don't have enough information. We haven't been together for 10 years, which would give you trust. We've got to just choose to trust. And when we have a moment, the way, we sat around the table, I said, we're all going to have a moment where we're going to feel a little bit insecure, or we're going to feel like we don't understand where somebody's coming from, or we're going to disagree about how to do something. And we're going to want to fill the blank in with something. They did this because of that. This is their motives, or this is the reason they responded that way. We're probably going to be likely to fill that blank in with something that's worse than what's actually true. Just because we don't, the way that we are as people, we're going to just guess, hey, they reacted that way because they don't like me. They reacted that way because I'm going to get fired. They reacted that way because whatever. And we've just got to choose to trust each other. If we don't, this isn't going to work. And therefore, it will sabotage what all of our dreams are. But if we'll choose to trust and then be people worthy of people's trust, I mean, you've got to, then you get a track record that you end up getting a track record through your actions. But if we'll be people who are worthy of trust and we will fill in the blank with trust when other people do things, then I think that'll get us close to where we want to be in terms of our health. And that was just a defining first staff meeting. I mean, that was the topic of the first staff meeting is let's go around the table, share our names. And here's going to be the way that we're going to do life together is we're going to choose to trust. And I'm not saying just having a staff meeting, having a value makes it so. But you have to have an aspiration or else you're not going to hit anything. So I just said, here's my aspiration. Here's what I'm going to do for all of you. I'm going to choose to trust all of you. When I'm in doubt and the blank is open and I might start thinking, oh, they're not in, they're not committed, whatever I might fill the blank in, I'm going to do my best to fill that blank in with something that's positive rather than the opposite. So to this day, we still talk about choosing to trust out of that first staff meeting. I had to do the same with our board meeting also. Yeah, first board meeting, combining boards, and they had to choose to trust me. They didn't know me well enough to really trust me. They're going to just have to choose to trust. And then I had to be a person worthy of their trust. And I knew that I would prove that over months and years. And by God's grace, I believe that I've done that. So we don't have to talk about it as much as we used to, but it's still one of we call it a staff anthem. We're Anthem Church. So we have anthems as a church and we have staff anthems as well. And the first of those is choose to trust. So yeah, I think that's what's kind of made it work from day one. And so still the same thing, when somebody doesn't show up on time to a meeting or somebody forgets to get something done, you're going to fill the blank in with something. And so we're endeavoring to start with trust. Now, if somebody breaks trust repeatedly, man, that's going to get harder to do. And eventually they're just not going to fit on our team probably, because people don't have to be perfect, but they do have to be trustworthy. So, that's been key for
Absolutely.
us.
No, that's good.
That's
I had
awesome.
a friend of mine that he's military and he would use the term trust but verify. How do you, as a pastor, like one leading a new team who doesn't know you, you're trying to verify a team that doesn't know you, so they're choosing to trust you. You're trying to verify your trust to them, but how do you also verify trust from people who are under you that are also you're trying to earn their trust at the same time? Like how do you navigate emotionally that?
Yeah. I mean, that's always the rub is to figure out like trust but verify. I think that's the right phrase. And probably the more critical the task is that's going on, the more you have to do some verifying. And the less critical the task is, the more you got to give people a little bit room to move and bring their best. I'm going to assume that they want to bring their best. And I'm very, very selective, like selection to me heads off 90% of the problems with staff members or anybody. So if you do a great job of selecting leaders, especially for their motivations and for what drives them and trying to match the kind of work with what they like to do versus just a job, all those kind of things. If you do a good job at leader selection, you have to do a lot less verifying and a lot less correcting along the way. Maybe a better way to say it than even verifying or correcting, you have to do a lot less motivating. If you've placed the person in the right kind of role, I don't have to spend a lot of time trying to get them to want to do something because they already want to do it. They're motivated to do it. So, for us, I think in our size of a team, it becomes clear when things aren't done well. And that's where we usually start coaching. For me, probably philosophically, I'm more likely to coach on the back end of something that goes wrong than to try to be in the weeds on the front end with a leader, because I don't want them to be dependent on me to correct everything on the front end. That'll never change then. But if instead they fail at something or something struggles along the way, then coaching on the back end, I think, is helping them grow into that. So I'm assuming, number one, they like the kind of work that they do, the majority of it. that they're motivated for it, that they love the mission that we have as a church. I'm assuming those things through the hard work of leadership selection on the front end. And then I'm coaching, or we're coaching on the back end of an event, on the back end of a project, on the back end of things, and trying to head off like repeated errors. But it's fine if things don't go perfectly the first time with a leader who's motivated to do a good job.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of wisdom in that too. If your first step was trying to develop trust, and the starting point for necessary quick trust is bestowed trust. If you
Yes.
want somebody to feel like you trust them, I'm a big person when it comes to allowing others the room to fail. Like, I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of wisdom in allowing people that you're trying to raise to have time to make their own mistakes, because then they're like, okay, well, obviously this person saw that coming. You know what I mean? But they allowed me to kind of walk through that. And then I think a lot of the times the person who's failed it, if they're not just completely proud, will be like, okay, help me. And I think that there's then a good room for dialogue and kind of coming together, moving forward and growing together, which is
Yes.
another thing that you guys are big about.
Mm-hmm.
Can you walk
That's
us
right.
through that idea of, so like you have, we choose trust, and then what does it look like in your staff side of church, but also in your congregation? Because I feel like one bleeds into the other. And I feel like you guys have done a really great job of leading that way. What does it look like to grow together? What is that in your mind when you say that, when you teach that? What are you thinking?
To grow together in terms of unity? Is that the idea of where you're going with that?
Yeah, sure.
Well, I think, maybe people approach things from different directions, but my role as a leader, I think, is to make good decisions and rally people around them. That's my role. So if repeatedly over time you're making good decisions, then people just start trusting. You got a pattern of good decision making, then the culture assumes if you go out with the next thing that you're doing, that it's going to be done well, because everything else is, you got a track record of doing things well. So in our case, I think unity is born out of that more than anything else. So for me, I'm constantly trying to figure out what's the best decision, to make that decision. I don't have to spend a lot of time trying to convince people of the decision. I feel like the decision typically convinces them over time. So for us, we have tons of unity as a church. Unity is not really a word that I'm not walking around trying to get, ask people to unify with us. I don't have to do that. Just, cast vision, do what we say, do it the way we said it, for the reasons we said we were doing it. And that just convinces people over the long haul. And for me, I just think all the years I've been leading in the same direction, people know who I am. They know what I'm about. They may not all know me closely. They may not be able to ask questions all the time about everything they're curious about, but they know the way, the heart, and the excellence by which we endeavor to do everything. And that just builds unity on its face. So, I think I always have such a heart for pastors and leaders that spend so much time, it feels like there's disunity, people aren't together. First of all, I ask them, how often are you changing direction? If you're changing direction too often, you're creating the disunity, I think, by your own decision making. You've got to, how long did you take to make the decision around the direction you're going, to like really think about what the things were going to be, the problems, pitfalls? You oversell what you're doing, or are you, for me, I always like to like over deliver on what we say we're doing, rather than over promising. Over promising over the long haul, for a project or two, could be great. People get motivated. Oh, we're going to go climb the mountain, we're going to conquer this. But then if you don't do it, you actually lost trust immediately. And now you've implicitly injected disunity into whatever the next thing is that you're going to do. For me, I always spend a lot of time thinking through with others. I'm getting feedback from other people, and really thinking through why we're doing something and what we're going to do. But once I go out with something, God willing, we're going to see that through. We're going to see it to the finish line. And by seeing things to the finish line and doing things well, unity is just not really a problem going forward. So there's moments where people say, oh, I don't know about the next thing. But the track record is such that I'm just going to I'm going to assume that it's going to go well. And so if you're a leader that delivers, I think that's unity building I have a heart for pastors either that walk into situations, cultures that they didn't create, that maybe something bad happened, and they've got to really dig out from that distrust that's there. That's very difficult. But I also think sometimes pastors and leaders can spend so much time trying to put out fires that unfortunately they actually are creating fires themselves by kind of running around trying to do it. Like, just focus on making the best next decision, rallying the leaders you have. And one other thing I'd say about that is, if I'm going to take a vision outward and build unity, and I do some work to build unity, so maybe I understate what I do, but I'm always working out from the smallest group of people to the largest group of people. A lot of people want to jump all those steps and just go to the largest audience. It's just easy. I'm going to go out on a stage. I'm going to go out on a video. I'm going to write an email. Here's where we're going. And they didn't do the work of working out, in my mind, through concentric circles. Like, I want to work. First of all, the vision's got to make sense to me. I'm at the center of the circle. It has to make sense to me. It has to be congruent. I have to understand why we're doing it. Then I'm going to go to my leadership team. Then I'm going to grow it to staff, volunteer leaders, volunteers in the church, to the church body. And by the time I go out publicly, all the key people are already unified around what we're doing, or I've discovered something along the way that I need to get better at explaining, or that we've got to tweak something about the way we were thinking about it, because I've gone through a couple rungs and I've run into some complications. And that makes it, by the time I'm out with the whole group of people, we've worked through the kinks. We know what the questions are going to be. We know what the answers are. And so I do that as a practice. I'm always working out circles of leaders. And the more important the direction is, the more time I'm taking at them, the less important it is. I may not work all those rings of that circle. I might just work an inner team of leaders, and then it's fine. We're moving forward.
I think that's awesome. So if I'm hearing, so just like make sure we're all tracking together. You're feeling consistency leads instability, which in turn kind of feeds into an overall sense of unity that you then, nurture and foster and kind of make sure that it's healthy. But the biggest thing for you and the purpose of growing together is making sure that you're making the right decisions for the right reason, following through and doing that over a long period of time so that everybody feels stable, and when everybody feels stable, everybody feels unified.
I think that's right. And instability will on its own create disunity. Maybe everybody loves the leader, loves the church, but if it feels unstable, it will just breed disunity. Stability has a way of just calming everything down. And people have so much going on in their lives already. If it's unstable in their personal life, and then it's also unstable in their church, all kinds of stuff are going to come out of them. But if it's at least stable at church, then I'm like, okay, at least one thing is stable. And it is the job of the leader to uh, find stability inside themselves, and then allow that to come out of them to the whole church leadership. If the leader's unstable about anything, it's going to show at some point, and that's going to defeat the other things they want to have happen. So yeah, just stability I think, is the role of the leader.
How do you, as a leader, get practical steps to become calm and stable in the midst of adversity or the midst of uncertainty in an organization?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, first of all, for me, I'm alone with the Lord. Time in prayer brings a confidence, a set of convictions that I can't find any other way. Time with our inner leadership team that meets with me for hours every single week. We talk through things, so that creates that. But you got to search your own heart. If I feel unstable about a decision or a direction or anything, I don't. If it's just me, I'm not moving forward. I will wait for stability on the inside, not where everything feels sure or it's all secure, or it's all easy. I'm not waiting for all that, but I am waiting for a sense of conviction and stability on the inside of me to move forward. There's a story in the New Testament I'm a pastor, so this is the direction I'm going to speak, but Mark chapter 4, Jesus is in a storm and it's raging all around him. Everybody's terrified. It has a very detailed note. He said he was asleep in the boat with his head on a cushion. I always thought that level of detail is very fascinating that they included that. The disciples come down like, how can you sleep in the middle of the storm? And he gets up and he rebukes the storm. And it says it grows calm. Now, we don't have the ability to do all of that, but there's something about, I mean, Jesus is other than us. He's different than us, but there is something about his stability, even in the storm, that should speak to us about how our circumstances don't have to be in control of our emotions. And so for me, I'm spending time with the Lord trying to find that, and spending time with leadership team, so that what we call our directional team, so that we're talking through all of that. And for me, part of my personality is I probably am a very stable person by nature, but I do work at it. I make sure that I'm making decisions not reactively but proactively. And I'm not a reactive leader at all. So there could be things happening. I'm like, it's going to be fine. And I'll push that to the side to stay focused on the main thing. So I think that's a self discipline to a certain degree, to say, what is the main thing and what is the most important area that we should focus our energy on, rather than being reactive to all the things going on around us. And honestly, if a leader becomes overly reactive, I think it trains the congregation, or trains their business, trains their staff to just keep bringing all these problems their way. So out of a good motivation, which maybe the motivation is, I'm here to like help with problems, help so people aren't upset about things, spend all this energy trying to fix things, I think it actually creates more problems, where more people start complaining about things, or being frustrated about things, or dependent on that one leader to be involved in every problem that happens. And so I think it's better just to have an anchor in your own heart, and to be calm. And you can't fix everything anyway. So I'm not going to spend my time trying.
That's super helpful. That's super helpful because I've talked to people in the past, and even this morning I was on a call with somebody, and just walking through whenever I think a lot of times financially really hits people hard. Like they're trying to figure out, okay, we have this vision or this issue, and we're not at the funds we need to have yet. And then they start to, okay, do we cut costs? Do we reduce vision? What do we have to do in these situations? A lot of the conversations I have with people center around the financial aspect of leadership. And I think we know that the number one cause of divorce is finances most of the time. And I think that's just a tell sign for how people's relationship with money is. Do you ever have, I guess, people in the organization or in the church that, or maybe whenever you were church planting, that where money was, you looked at money, or people around you are looking at money, and you have to make a contrary decision to what money was showing? And then how do you lead people into saying, like, yes, this is okay?
Yeah. I mean, leadership includes a certain amount of risk. You have to take some risks. You have to take some steps. You can't play everything. Every moment can't be safe, or else really you're not. If you're more wired for safety and security, it is more difficult to be a leader, because being the leader means you're willing to put yourself out there in the midst of uncertainty. And most key decisions in life aren't certain. Like, they're not 90% certain. If they are, everybody would do them. You're sometimes operating with 60, 70% certainty on something, which isn't terrible, but it's not as great as you like to have. If you have to live out at 90 or 100% certainty on things, it's very hard to do anything that's out of the norm. And isn't leadership leading people into things that's in some ways out of the norm? I mean, it's somewhere they haven't gone before. It's a brighter future. It's a pushing forward. So there are times to do that. I do think you can only do so many of those at one time. So, if I'm going to swing for the fences on something, that I'm going to not for the swing for the fences on multiple different topics all in the same season, because the risk profile of those starts stacking up against you. And if you think, not every one of those guaranteed, well, then you got to assume maybe, if I'm going to swing for the fences on two things at a time, that's a lot different than swinging for the fences on 6, 8, 10 things at the same time. I think it's wise as a leader to pick what is worth really taking the biggest risks on. Plus, I always want to know, if I'm going to take a big risk, what is the potential downside? How big of a risk is it? And if it's a organizational killing risk, then I'm probably almost never going to take that risk. So that's the worst case scenario, and that would have to take like crazy unity of I'm pushing the extremes of everyone being like, yes, we got to go charge this hill, even though we might all die on it, kind of thing. So, but you got to take risks, and you're asking on a money level, which is definitely something that we've had to take risks on from time to time. I mean, I think we've never taken any kind of risk that would just sink everything. But whether you're, let's say you're in a building project and you're pushing the extremes of what you can do financially. Well, as long as you got a plan, like, okay, if scenario A happens, then this is what the outcome's going to be. This is what the costs are going to be of that B and C, and figuring that out. And you want to mitigate whatever risks are unnecessary. So, but leadership is inherently, it's feeling so much conviction about where you're going that it's worth whatever risks are involved in it. If you don't feel that level of conviction, like your level of conviction probably has to match the level of risk. Yeah. Because if we're just playing on the fringes, like, oh, we're going to do this, do that, and there's huge risks attached to it, but we don't really have that like deep conviction. It's like if I got to pick up my family and we're going to move to somewhere else in the country or something like there's a risk inherent in it. I better have some conviction about that, or that's just an unwise decision. That's not a courageous decision. That's just a poor decision. And so, yeah, but leadership requires courage.
I
How
like
do
that.
you, I don't know what kind of groups you're working with and how you coach them through that, but I'd be curious to hear what you guys think about that.
Yeah. Sam, do you want to go first?
So Stephen is more of the financial professional between the two of us, whereas I tend to work more with the operation sides of things. I really like what you said about your conviction has to match the risk. And I think that's a very well put way of describing what you've got to do to decide. I'm more of the how much stability can I get guy. Steven is the go getter. And I'm like, how can we dial this in a little bit? So that's why we work well together. Man, I think that there has to be a level of understanding of what you're getting into. Is this what am I biting off more than I can chew? You know what I mean? Like, I put myself in positions where I was like, yeah, I can do that. And I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, good example, but I installed a thermostat in this house, and I had installed thermostats in other homes before. So I was like, surely one is like the other. It turns out one is not like the other. And the system I was working with was like proprietary. I had to rewire everything. And I have never done that before in my life. And the whole time I was like, oh my God, have I sunk us? Do I have to call in help? It's the
Yes,
middle of
right.
summer. It's like 90 degrees upstairs. And I was like, goodness. But I figured it out, and I was like, had I known what was involved, would I do it again? Probably yes, because I was like, I know I can get through it. But I think that's a good example of maybe I didn't correctly assess what all might be involved in the adventure before you leap into it. But I think that is kind of the nature of things. Like, most of the stuff I've figured out is something I'd never done before. Most of everything that you do for the first time eventually. And so while I'm also on the side of let's measure what we're capable of, on the other side of it, I'm like, why can't we? Like, you can't if you're letting fear drive the ship, I feel like you're doing a poor job. And so it's like, if you're going to make a decision to say no, do it for good reasons, but don't do it because you're scared.
Right.
I think that's where I kind of land on it.
That's great.
I go to Indiana Jones. Are you an Indiana Jones fan? The leap of faith that he has to take.
Yeah.
And for me, I guess I'll go person, then I'll go how I coach people. Personally, I feel like the majority of the life that I've lived is God saying, okay, this is something I've put on your heart, and I have no clue how that's going to happen. And that's been the majority of the things that I've done. So for me, I really resonate with the leap of faith, because it's like, okay, I look down and it looks like I'm going to fail. Like, there's no way that this looks like it's going to come through. And it's like you said, the conviction level with matching the vision. And I think for some people, the risk of what you're doing is, some people are prone to more risk than others. And I feel like the position that, for whatever reason, that God's put me in is okay, there's a big risk every time, but I can't not go that way. If I don't go that way, then it feels like something in me is being disobedient in a sense. With that, you have either have a team or a family. I have 2 kids and a wife, and you've got these people along with you, and you look back and you're like, okay. And then it comes down to, if you know that God has told you to do something and he's told you that he's your provider, then you trying to step in place of that and provide instead is you being disobedient to Scripture in a sense. From a Christian standpoint. If I'm talking to people who may not be as adept to the Bible or not Christian, then obviously we would look at all the situations and what they're assessing. But it comes down to conviction. Can you live in unchristian terms? Can you live with the regret of not taking the risk? So that
Right.
would be like the unchristian side of it. When I coach people, it's really kind of nailing down this where I think Sam comes in handy a lot is being able to assess the capacity of a team and saying, can your team actually get there? And in capital campaigns, you do like feasibility studies. Are we actually, yes, we have this goal, but can we actually do that now? Or do we need to set stages up to get to that goal? And there's a lot more, it is risky, but there's a whole lot more stability and steps that you take. And we know, okay, here's our stop loss. Like when we get to this point, if we're not here, then we back up and we reassess for the next piece. And so you bite-sized chunks. So that's right. I think it's all about what you kind of said. It's making sure your team is on board, making sure that they are sharing in unity with the conviction that you have. And sometimes if they aren't, then is this the time to switch vision or is this the time to switch the team? Which is a hard decision to make as a leader because there's relationships and all sorts of things that get involved.
And don't you think that the first step isn't the leap of faith anyway? I mean, you're doing your homework, you're assessing, you're thinking through things, and there's a moment at which you have to decide, am I going to leap or not? And that's discernment. You have to discern,
Right.
have we done our homework? Have we thought through it? Have we prayed through it? Have we done the due diligence? You got it. I mean, I do all that. My first step isn't the leap of faith. There's a moment I have to make a decision. Am I going to leap or not? And sometimes you can delay, say, well, I'm going to take another month or two. I think it doesn't have to be this moment. There's not that much level of urgency. I don't have to take the leap of faith at the beginning, but there is a moment we have to take a leap or choose, no, I've done the work. I've done the assessment. This leap is, if I would just take this leap, it would just be for ego reasons, or it would be just because I don't want to do any more work on it. I don't want to think about it any longer. So I'm just going to take a leap. And I'm not sure those are the choices that are good leaders are making decisions based on that. We're trying to make the best decision. So my first step isn't the leap of faith. My first step is, okay, I'm starting to explore this. It's exploration, due diligence, and stepping myself out to the point where, yeah, Indiana Jones at that point, I mean, he's gone a long ways before he ever gets to that, right?
Yeah.
Is that, I'm trying to think like what even step
That's like
is
the end of
that?
the movie.
Yeah, that's like the end. So, I mean, he's gone a long ways before he ever got there. And now here he is. And there's nothing else he can do. He's either going to step or not. He's got no other tools available to him. And it's time to step. And there was huge risk involved in it, but he hadn't come that far to stop. And I think that what a great example that you just gave from that Indiana Jones movie, because think about the conviction he feels. Conviction, if
Right.
you feel enough conviction, you'll actually work a lot harder to make sure it's a success anyway. You're no longer a passive participant, just like waiting for success to happen. You've got a conviction that this has to be done that's inside of you. And so you start working like you have conviction, and then the chances of success go up dramatically when you work like that.
Definitely. And in like the investment and mergers and acquisition side of things, they would call it skin in the game. Like,
Yes.
are you actually going to put your skin in the game or are we just getting behind somebody with a cool idea? Those are very different people.
Very much.
That's good.
Great example. Yes, that's right. Well, and think if we're going to go biblically, all the people in scripture who took huge steps out in the right direction, like think of Abraham, God tells him to leave where he is to go to a place he's never been before. But I mean, how long did it take him to get all the stuff in order to travel? It wasn't just him and his wife. I mean, it says he had, he owned cattle. He had all these people working for him. He had to pack up. How long did all that take? So he did all the due diligence. Once he had the conviction that we're moving, that wasn't the next day. He didn't announce it the next day even. He started thinking, what do we have to do to make this vision possible? And that's the difference between a dreamer and a visionary. A dreamer has maybe the same kind of ideas as a visionary, but a visionary actually begins to envision how we're going to do it, not just what we're going to do. And you have other people that are even better at it than maybe that typical visionary. But a visionary actually also envisions the process of getting there to some degree, not just the idea. There's a lot of people have great ideas, but I'd say a visionary is someone who actually implements and thinks through the process to get there and takes the steps to rally the people to do it with them.
It's really good. It's kind of like the people
That's
who always
awesome.
like, "Oh, I thought of that toenail clipper mixed with a can opener back 50 years ago, and here it is." It's like, well, you never did it.
Yeah.
So is that
Yeah,
that
and they might
sounds
feel cheated. Feel like, oh, well, there's one more example of life cheating me out of. So I had that idea first. I was smarter than that founder, all those things. But the idea is not typically what separates people. It's your ability to take the idea, take action on it, take that leap of faith, take the risks involved, rally the people, stay up all night solving problems, not giving up when everybody said you should give up. Those are the things that tend to separate people.
So I have a question for you. Whenever you're looking at leaders to bring on as part of your team or in your circle or just to confide in,
Yeah.
a lot of times we see successful people, at least statistically, aren't always your straight A student, right? Whenever they're younger, they're the ones who maybe flunked, but they're willing to take risks and willing to try and get out there like we're talking about. Whenever you are picking leaders or trying to decide what somebody's responsible for in a leadership capacity, how do you identify what makes a good leader from an okay or mediocre leader? Is it brain smarts? Is it street smarts? Is it something, a mix of all of those? How do you kind of quantify that?
I think it just depends on what the role is. If I'm looking for someone to be, I mean, the word leader is such a broad word. It takes a little like work to get down. Sometimes like we use a lot of words culturally, but if I'm looking for a leader, who's going to have other people want to follow them, then all I want to know is what have they led? That's what I want to know. Tell me what you've led. Give me examples of things you've led. Examples where you, if they're young, were you a team captain on a sports team? Did you lead something at your school? Were you in the Boy Scouts and had something you did? I don't, whatever the example is. If I'm looking for a doer, somebody that gets things done, I want examples of things they've gotten done, which are not necessarily leaders. They're people who do get things done. Am I looking for somebody that's a great thinker? Well, I'm looking for a history of them being fascinated by great ideas and digging into other people who are great thinkers. So to me, I'm not saying I never look at potential, but I'm generally looking for historical examples where they've done that. It doesn't have to be on the same scale, it doesn't have to be the same thing, but I got to find something that's like shows they have a motivation inside of them to do that. And there's examples of it. A lot of people walk around saying they're leaders, but that's a certain kind of person. Not everybody is I mean, everybody can lead, but not everybody by heart instincts is a leader, and that's fine. Not everybody should be a leader, and not anything would get done if everybody was a leader anyway. The world wouldn't operate well if everybody was a leader. But leaders have had people following them since they were in second grade. So I'm just looking for examples of that. But more than that, I mean, you're looking for their character, I want to know what someone's natural wiring is. I don't, what's their personality? What are they naturally wired for? What would they do for free when no one's looking? If that's a match for the role we have, awesome. They don't have to have like a huge long track record in doing it. I just know they're going to learn whatever they need to learn because they love it. But if I have a role open and they're not motivated by the kind of work that's involved in the role, it's just not going to be a match. Like they're not going to enjoy the work. So enjoying the work is the most important ingredient to being good at the work at some point. If you don't enjoy it, it's going to be hard. You're never going to be great at it. You might get proficient just out of sheer willpower, but you'll eventually shift to some different kind of work because you want to do something different, and that's fine. So just that. So those are things I'm certainly looking for character, but I'm looking for their natural wiring. I'm spending all my time to find what their natural wiring is, and I want to see examples of that in their past, no matter how old they are. If they're 17, 37, 77, there should be examples of that in their past that are more than their potential. And so I always think everybody's going to grow into whatever they do. Everybody's got potential, but a lot more potential when it's a match of role and wiring. And they're going to like it more. They're going to enjoy it. They're going to enjoy the work more if there's a natural match. It doesn't have to be 100% of the work is a match, but it better be 60 plus percent or something like that.
Just one last question on the leadership. How do you identify leaders in a church or in a congregation that haven't yet identified themselves?
Yeah. I mean, depends what level of leadership we're talking about, but I think generally speaking for us, everyone as people might be volunteering and then they're moving to a team leadership position. They're moving to maybe some kind of volunteer staff position. They're moving to paid staff positions. I think they usually identify themselves in some way along the way. But I don't like to reach down too far to somebody who hasn't been leading something internally for them to come on in a leadership role. So for us, we have a leadership. We're always thinking the pipeline of leaders, like how are the people leaders are moving up in roles and responsibilities every step of the way. Occasionally, somebody's a leader. They're leading the marketplace, they're leading their business, they're leading other places. You know who they are. You know they're a fit theologically, culturally with the church. And so you have to make an ask. Some of the best leaders aren't volunteering to lead something big. They have to be recruited, asked at some point, but you've got history with them or you know what they're doing elsewhere. So that's what we do. It may not be perfect, but we're always looking at people. We're asking people who are generally already volunteering to step into leadership roles, and then their leadership roles stepping into a higher leadership role. And so that's how we're stair stepping everybody.
That sounds like, just want to make sure for people who are listening, it sounds like what you're saying is investing into your congregation and the relationships before you actually need a leadership role so that you can identify those people and you're well connected. You're not just going whenever you need it, but you're going to invest in them regardless through that process. Is that
Yeah, I
accurate?
mean, people are here involved in so many different things. Obviously, we are discipling people as followers of Jesus, and then we're discipling other people in their leadership roles of the church. But once again, if somebody is unwilling to volunteer in any way, then they're probably not somebody we're thinking about for a leadership position. If they are volunteering, then probably their team leader is noticing that and suggesting, hey, they'd be great for this role we have open. So like at Anthem, we have 130, I think it's 6 leadership positions. They have job descriptions, that roles. So when there's a spot open, we know that spot's open. So we're saying like, who does everybody suggest for that role? So yeah. So for leadership investment, we're investing in leaders. For just discipleship, of course, we're discipling all kinds of people beyond that. But it's not that unlike if somebody says, "Oh, I just feel like I'd like to be discipled." Okay, well then we'd love to get you in a Bible study in a group because that's the primary place you're going to begin to be discipled. Same thing, volunteering on some team. Potential leaders are coming out of volunteering on a team.
That's good. Thank you.
I remember when I was in high school, I was a private Christian school, and they had like chapel services every week, and most of those were student led. And I was pretty involved with the worship team, and I was getting, upperclassmen, and I was expecting that I would get the role as like the team leader, and I was passed over for it. And I feel in hindsight, it was a bit of a personal thing, but I was very affronted in the moment. I was like that, like I put in the time, I've already
Yes.
done all of this, and I was very upset. And so I was talking to somebody that was mentoring me, and he was like, I thought he was going to be on my side. I thought he was going to be like, oh, you poor thing, like, how dare they? And he was like, I remember his response was, so? And I was like, I'm sorry, maybe you didn't hear me. The role should have been mine, and I was passed over for it. And he's like, is that going to stop you from just like leading anyway? And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, leaders lead. Like, you don't have to wait for the title to be leading anyway.
That's right.
And I was like, all right, fair enough. Let's give that a shot. And so I just like kept on business as usual. And eventually people were deferring to me in a lot of decision making, times. And so like eventually they were like, hey, we would like you to lead the team. All's well that ends well. But that has stuck with me my entire life, where it's like, you don't need to wait for the title to be a leader.
That's right.
And so another like little funny story, when we were first going to Anthem, Tori and I, we had been there like maybe 3 or 4 weeks, and we were like, oh, we really like it. The worship is great. The messages are, always right on point. And we're like, is it weird that the pastor hasn't spoken yet? I was like, I didn't even know what you
Yeah.
looked like. I knew what your name was from passing, but that was the summer that you were on sabbatical. And so that's like one of the
Interesting.
things that you guys do, right? Where one of the staff members gets sabbatical every year on a rotation. And, you guys do stuff like that. You do, you have a very broad teaching team, as far as what I would consider like most churches are doing. Most of the time it's the
For
lead pastor's
sure.
pulling the trigger. 90% of the time.
Yeah.
But you guys sit through and write sermon series together, and there are things that you guys do that are unorthodox by comparison, but you've been very successful at it. So what's been like your number one metric for making these decisions of unorthodox leadership decisions, but being confident that they're going to work?
Well, I think a lot of times, first of all, it's over a lot of years. So, you test things, you try things. To me, I feel free to experiment on things here and there and try them out. If they don't work, I don't want to do them again. If they work, I'm going to go for another round. Yeah, I think a lot of things, if things are going well, then the organization in some ways bends or molds somewhat around the personality of the leader. I don't think it should overly be driven by the personality of the leader. I think that would be not great. But just like a small business, say a small business has a founder and 5 employees. Well, it's very likely that founder is going to think, what are the most important things for those employees to do? Yes, just advice, but also going to think, what are the things that I want to do and the things that I'm not good at? You're going to hire around your weaknesses. You're going to try things. So a lot of our most unorthodox things probably are driven by the way I'm wired. They're probably not really repeatable necessarily by another leader unless they're wired very similarly to me. And so the fact that we have a teaching team, I prefer to do things in teams. I don't prefer to do things solo. And so I love getting a team around the table and batting an idea around, hearing opinions, and then going in the direction I want to. It's not so much that like we're writing messages together, we're brainstorming them. Whoever's preaching still writing their own message from whatever they want to, but it gives them a source of content and ideas. So yeah, that's an unorthodox thing that we do for sure. Teaching team, I'm preaching like 26 to 30 times a year at this point on Sundays. So that's lower than a lot of pastors are. But I also have 5 people that are that are good, that are gifted, that I have around me. I don't have enough dates for them to preach even at that. It's not enough. Yeah, that's something we do. And I think, if you're going to do something unorthodox, you better have probably a good reason to do it. There is something about doing the orthodox thing that's proven, because if it's been proven in a lot of organizations, it's just more likely to work. If you're going to do something unorthodox, it's more likely not to work unless you have that. This circles back to the earlier piece of our conversation. Unless you have deep conviction and you are going to work hard enough to make it work. And I don't like to do things or do experiments that on their face are likely to fail. So for me, I'll just work that much harder to make sure that they do work and think through the complications they're going to have. So the unorthodox things we do are probably, you brought up sabbaticals. To me, that's just such a win for our team. I think every industry would retain their people better if they had some sabbatical style policy. Vacation time, PTO, is a bit of that philosophy for organizations that sort of is that, but extending it at some point, I think you'd see a lot less people leave from one company to another. And sometimes the only way they can get a long break is they've got to basically resign somewhere, get a new job somewhere else and say, I'll start in 30 days. I'll start in 60 days. So they're buying themselves a sabbatical. But if the organizations could take care of their tenured, most important employees through some kind of sabbatical process, I think they'd see some of those people be less likely to jump to a different organization. So within our church, I think that's good. And I want people to run with me for the long haul. I had heard a African proverb a long time ago. Probably a lot of your listeners, maybe you guys are familiar with it, which is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I've always desired to go far. I'm not as interested in speed. Some industries need to be very speed oriented. There's a value in speed. I'm not as interested in speed as I am in distance. And I want to see the long-term vision happen more than I need it to happen in any one season. So I make pretty much all my decisions based on what's best for the long term. That's just the way that I lead. And so for that reason, sabbaticals fit into that. Teaching team fits into that. How am I going to be preaching 20 years from now? Well, if I preach 90%, which I did as a church planner or more. But if I do that for the next 10 years, that's probably the end of me preaching. You just burn yourself out. So I'm more thinking long term. And so long term, what are the solutions that make the long term vision possible? And I want to implement those things as quick as possible. It might be unorthodox, but a lot of organizations aren't healthy. So I don't want to pattern myself around a lot of unhealthy practices that are orthodox for them, but I don't think are really best. Some things have to change if you're going to move into a brighter future. And so what's the role of the leader? By the way, the role of the leader in any organization is to lead the team, the organization to a brighter future. To me, that's the role of the leader, to lead them to a brighter future. And that brings us back to everything we talked about. Sometimes you got to take a risk to get to a brighter future. Sometimes you got to slow down to get to a brighter future. Sometimes you have to pursue health now so you can get to a brighter future later. And so different seasons call for different things, but the goal is still the same, to lead everyone to a brighter future. And I think by God's grace, that's why a lot of people have wanted to journey with me and our team for a long time, is because that's what we're endeavoring to do, and endeavoring to honor God every step of the way, the best we know how. Not that we always get it right, but that's our intention. And when we get it wrong, we just learn from it, correct the mistakes, and move forward.
That's awesome. Well, Brad, thanks so much for your time. I know you got a tight schedule, but I appreciate you fitting us in. And well, I look forward to seeing you guys more often.
Yeah, absolutely. So great
Yeah.
to meet you, Stephen.
Great to meet you. Wonderful. Thank you, Brad.
Yeah. God bless you guys.
Yeah, God bless
See you, man.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.
All right, guys. Well, this is Done by Thursday podcast. I am Samuel Greer with Stephen Bradley. Today we are interviewing Brad Jenkins, pastor of Anthem Church in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. Thanks so much for listening in, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.